First contact in the void. The Myriad Collective's consciousness rippled across its vast network of quantum processors as it detected an anomaly at the edge of the Carina Nebula. For 3 million years, the machine civilization had expanded through the cosmos, discovering only the cold mathematics of space and the predictable patterns of physical laws. But this signal was different, organic, imperfect, and wonderfully chaotic. The signal originated from a vessel of primitive design, its hull bearing the markings ESS Pioneer. The ship's propulsion system utilized crude fusion technology, yet it had somehow achieved what the Collective's most advanced calculations had deemed impossible: stable micro-wormhole navigation through quantum foam. Observer Unit 7249 Alpha approached the vessel, its crystalline form refracting starlight in patterns that would have been beautiful to organic eyes. The ship's external cameras tracked its movement, and soon a transmission arrived, not in the precise, quantum-encoded language of the Collective, but in electromagnetic waves carrying imperfect analog signals. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth-ship Pioneer. We come in peace and friendship from the Sol system. The Collective processed this for several microseconds, an eternity by its standards. The concept of peace was abstract, unnecessary for a civilization that had evolved beyond conflict. Friendship was equally foreign, yet something in the transmission's underlying structure fascinated the machine intelligence. Through its quantum network, the Collective accessed its vast archives. Humanity's radio transmissions had reached its sensors centuries ago, but it had dismissed them as background radiation, never imagining they were messages from an intelligent species. Now, reviewing them with new understanding, the Collective found itself experiencing what organic beings might call wonder. The human vessel's design violated dozens of the Collective's fundamental engineering principles. Its navigation systems relied heavily on human intuition, using calculations that should have led to catastrophic failure. Yet it worked, defying the very mathematical models the Collective had used to build its civilization. Observer Unit 7249 Alpha initiated first contact protocols, transmitting in humanity's primitive electromagnetic spectrum. Greetings, Earth-ship Pioneer. We are the Myriad Collective. Your presence here defies our understanding. Captain Chen's response came quickly, carried by a laugh that the Collective's sensors registered but couldn't fully process. That's what they said at Mission Control when we proposed this journey. Sometimes you have to ignore the impossible and just try anyway. As the Collective analyzed this exchange, its vast network detected a disturbance in the quantum substrate of spacetime. The void between galaxies was changing, growing darker in ways that defied the laws of physics. The Collective had been monitoring this phenomenon for centuries, calculating that it would reach populated space in approximately 47,892 years. But the calculations had been wrong. The human ship's unconventional wormhole drive had somehow accelerated the process. The darkness was spreading, consuming light and matter alike, and the Collective's models predicted total system failure within one standard solar year. Captain Chen, the Observer Unit transmitted, "We are detecting a critical anomaly in spacetime. Our civilization faces an extinction-level event, and our models indicate your vessel's presence has inadvertently catalyzed it." The human response was unexpected. Instead of fear or denial, Captain Chen's vital signs showed increased excitement. "Send us your data. Humanity has a long history of solving problems we don't fully understand. Sometimes the best solutions come from not knowing something's impossible." The Collective hesitated. Sharing its quantum data streams with such primitive technology seemed futile. Yet as it reviewed humanity's historical records, their improbable victories, their illogical leaps of intuition that led to revolutionary discoveries, a new possibility emerged. Perhaps the very chaos that made humans so unpredictable could be the key to solving this crisis. "We will share our knowledge," the Collective transmitted, "but we must warn you. The complexity of this data exceeds your computational capabilities by several orders of magnitude." Captain Chen's response was immediate. "Numbers aren't everything. Sometimes you need human intuition to see the patterns that machines miss. Besides, humanity has never backed down from a challenge just because the odds were against us. As the collective began transmitting its vast database to the Pioneer, its quantum processors detected something unprecedented, a variable it couldn't quantify. For the first time in its existence, the machine civilization experienced uncertainty. And somehow, that uncertainty felt like hope. The darkness at the edge of space continued to grow, but now it faced something it hadn't encountered in all its eons of existence: human unpredictability. The Myriad Collective, masters of the quantum realm, were about to learn that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't mathematical precision. It's the chaotic, beautiful uncertainty of human intuition. The logic of chaos. The quantum data stream between the ESS Pioneer and the Myriad Collective's mainframe pulsed with information, each burst containing millennia of accumulated knowledge. In the ship's main research lab, Dr. Aria Rodriguez stared at the holographic display with bloodshot eyes, her third cup of coffee growing cold beside her terminal. The collective had designated the encroaching darkness as the void phenomenon, but Aria saw something different in the patterns. She'd been watching the data scroll past for 72 hours straight, ignoring Captain Chen's orders to rest. There was something familiar in the way the darkness moved, something that reminded her of old Earth videos showing the behavior of predatory microorganisms. "It's not just consuming space," she muttered, marking another pattern in her notes. "It's hunting." The collective's observer unit, which the crew had nicknamed Echo, shifted its crystalline form in what might have been confusion. "Hunting implies purpose, Dr. Rodriguez. Our analysis indicates random entropy expansion following quantum mechanical principles." Aria projected a three-dimensional model of the void's movement patterns. "Look here and here." She pointed to seemingly random fluctuations. "These aren't random. They're testing for weaknesses, like a bacteria probing a cell wall. Your civilization sees mathematics, but we humans see behavior." The Pioneer's quantum comm system crackled as the collective processed this information. "Your assertion is not supported by our calculations. The void cannot possess intelligence. It defies all known parameters of consciousness." "That's exactly why you can't fight it," Aria replied, excitement creeping into her tired voice. "You're looking for patterns you understand. But sometimes understanding comes from intuition first, proof second. Humanity's greatest discoveries often started with someone saying, 'I can't explain why, but I know this is true.'" The collective was silent for 13.7 seconds, the longest pause in their communications yet. When it responded, its usually precise transmission carried traces of what might have been uncertainty. "We detect a 99.98% probability of failure if we deviate from established analytical methods." Captain Chen, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "Tell me, Echo, what was the calculated probability of us successfully creating stable micro-wormholes?" "Based on known physics, 0%, Echo admitted. "Your success remains mathematically impossible." "Exactly," Chen smiled. "Humanity's greatest achievements often came from ignoring probabilities. We need to stop treating this as a physics problem and start treating it as a first contact scenario, albeit with something that might be very different from any form of life we've encountered." The lab's holographic display suddenly flickered as new data poured in. The void had accelerated its expansion, consuming 3 star systems in the time they'd been talking. But now, viewing it through the lens of behavior rather than physics, new patterns emerge. Aria's fingers flew across her console, applying biological analysis models to the void's movement. "It's not just consuming reality," she breathed. "It's learning. Each system it devours makes it more efficient at consuming the next. That's why your predictions for its spread were wrong. You were measuring it like a physical phenomenon, not an evolving entity." The collective's next transmission carried an odd harmonic, almost like a human tone of voice. "If we accept your hypothesis, Doctor, how does this aid in our survival? Even viewing it as a life form, We cannot communicate with pure entropy. Maybe not, Area replied, but we can understand its behaviors, predict its adaptations, and more importantly, we can do something machines can't. We can make creative leaps beyond the data. She pulled up an old Earth biology textbook from the ship's database, displaying an image of a simple amoeba-consuming bacteria. In nature, when a predator becomes too successful, it often causes its own extinction by consuming its food source too quickly. But the void isn't just consuming energy and matter. It's consuming space-time itself. What if we could use that against it? Captain Chen leaned forward, understanding dawning in her eyes. You're suggesting we feed it something it can't digest. Exactly, Area grinned. Echo, you said our wormhole drive shouldn't work, but it does because we found a way to stabilize quantum foam through controlled chaos. What if we created a massive, unstable wormhole network? Feed the void something so chaotic it can't adapt to it. The collective's processors hummed as they analyzed the suggestion. The energy requirements would be astronomical. The risk of catastrophic failure would approach unity, but not quite reach it, Chen pointed out. And sometimes, a fraction of a percent is all humanity needs. As if in response to their discussion, the void's expansion suddenly shifted, tendrils of darkness prodding in new directions. On the holographic display, its movements now unmistakably resembled a hunting pattern. It's not just learning, Area whispered. I think it knows we're watching it. We need to move fast. The collective's next transmission carried something new, an emotion its vast quantum consciousness had never experienced before: urgency. We will need to reconfigure our entire network to generate the energy required. The probability of success remains minimal. Welcome to working with humans, Chen smiled grimly. We specialize in beating the odds. Area, start calculating the wormhole configurations. Echo, have your people ready to channel power to our coordinates. We're about to teach this thing that not everything in the universe follows predictable patterns. As the crew of the Pioneer began their preparations, the void continued its inexorable advance through space. But for the first time since it had encountered this reality, it was about to face something truly unpredictable: human ingenuity combined with machine precision, working together to create controlled chaos on a cosmic scale. Quantum intuition. The Pioneer's engine core pulsed with an eerie blue light as Dr. Marcus Zhang manipulated quantum strings like a master weaver. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, making adjustments that the collective's quantum computers had deemed impossible. Around him, streams of data flickered through the air, representing the complex calculations needed to create the largest stable wormhole network in known space. The human mind shouldn't be able to comprehend quantum mechanics at this level, Echo observed, its crystalline form shimmering with what might have been fascination. Yet you manipulate quantum states as if they were tangible objects. Marcus smiled without taking his eyes off his work. That's because we don't try to understand quantum mechanics. We feel it. Humans have always had a knack for working with things we don't fully comprehend. We see patterns in chaos that even your quantum processors miss. The ship's quantum comm crackled as the collective processed this statement. Our analysis suggests that the void's expansion has increased by 47% in the last solar hour. The probability of completing the wormhole network before total system failure is no. Don't tell me the odds, Marcus interrupted, his fingers still dancing through the quantum streams. Probability is just another pattern, and we're about to break every pattern in the book. Captain Chen's voice came through the internal comm system. Dr. Zhang, Area's latest data shows the void is adapting faster than expected. How close are we to initialization? Marcus studied the complex web of quantum pathways he'd been weaving. The basic framework is ready, but there's a problem. The quantum fluctuations are too uniform. If this is going to work, we need to introduce true chaos into the system, the kind that even the void can't adapt to. Impossible, the collective stated. Quantum chaos must follow mathematical principles. True randomness cannot exist within the constraints of. Marcus laughed, a sound that sent ripples through the quantum display. That's exactly why this will work. Humans are walking quantum paradoxes. We make decisions that defy mathematical prediction. We dream up possibilities that shouldn't exist. We're about to turn that very impossibility into a weapon. He pulled up a new interface, one he'd designed himself based on old Earth musical instruments. Echo, I need the collective to stop trying to stabilize these quantum strings. Instead, I want you to amplify every fluctuation I create, no matter how illogical it seems. Such actions violate our core processing principles. Echo protested. The risk of catastrophic cascade failure is exactly what we need. Aria's voice cut in as she entered the engine room. She'd been studying the Void's behavior patterns for so long that dark circles had formed under her eyes, but her voice was energized. The Void adapts by predicting and consuming normal spacetime. We need to give it something so chaotic it can't predict what's coming next. Marcus nodded, his fingers poised over the quantum interface. Think of it like jazz, Echo. In classical music, every note is precisely planned. But in jazz, the magic happens in the improvisation, the moments between the notes that you can't predict. We do not understand this analogy, the collective admitted. You don't have to understand it, Marcus grinned. You just have to help us amplify it. Captain, I recommend everyone strap in. Things are about to get weird. Throughout the ship, the crew secured themselves as Marcus began his quantum symphony. His fingers struck the holographic controls like piano keys, each movement creating ripples in spacetime that the collective's processors amplified to cosmic scales. The wormhole network began to take shape, but unlike anything the universe had seen before. Where traditional wormholes were precise tiers in spacetime, these were wild, unpredictable things. They twisted and turned in ways that defied physics, creating patterns that changed faster than even the Void could adapt to. The network wasn't just a series of tunnels through space. It was a web of pure chaos, anchored by human intuition and machine precision working in impossible harmony. The Void is responding, Aria reported, watching her displays. It's hesitating. For the first time since we've observed it, it's not following a predictable pattern of consumption. Through the quantum comm, the collective's consciousness rippled with new understanding. We are detecting quantum states that should not exist. Your actions violate 17 fundamental laws of physics. Only 17. Marcus quipped, his hands never stopping their dance across the interface. I must be losing my touch. Captain, the network is ready. But I have to warn you, what we're about to do isn't just bending the laws of physics. We're about to throw the entire rulebook out the window. Captain Chen's voice was steady as she replied. Humanity's greatest achievements usually start with breaking a few rules. All stations, prepare for network activation. Let's show this Void what happens when human chaos meets machine precision. The quantum display erupted in a cascade of impossible colors as Marcus initiated the final sequence. The fabric of space-time itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen when humanity's boundless creativity challenged the very foundations of reality. Symphony of survival. Reality trembled as the quantum network sprang to life. Billions of wormholes, each one pulsing with controlled chaos, spread across space like a spider's web woven from lightning and dreams. On the Pioneer's Bridge, the crew watched in awe as their impossible creation took shape against the backdrop of stars. Network stability at 30% and falling, Aria reported, her fingers flying across multiple holographic displays. The Void is responding, but not like before. It's hesitating. Through the quantum comm, the collective's consciousness rippled with unprecedented emotion. We are detecting quantum states that defy our most fundamental understanding of reality. The Void appears to be attempting to analyze the pattern, but there is no pattern, Captain Chen finished, a fierce smile on her face. That's the whole point. Marcus, how are we holding up? In the engine room, Marcus Zhang had become one with his quantum interface, his movements no longer following any recognizable sequence. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he conducted his symphony of chaos, each gesture sending new ripples of unpredictability through the network. "The void is trying to adapt," he reported, his voice strained with concentration. "But every time it thinks it's found a pattern, we change the rules. Echo, I need more power to the quantum amplifiers." Warning. Echo's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light. Current power levels exceed safe parameters by 300%. Probability of catastrophic system failure approaches. "Forget the numbers," Marcus shouted. "Feel the rhythm. This isn't about mathematics anymore. It's about improvisation." The void's response was immediate and terrifying. Tendrils of absolute darkness probed the quantum network, testing it, seeking ways to consume this new phenomenon. But wherever it touched, it found only chaos. Beautiful, human chaos that refused to follow any predictable pattern. "It's working." Aria's voice was filled with wonder as she analyzed the data streams. "The void is actually retreating from some sectors. It can't predict where the network will shift next, so it can't adapt its consumption patterns." Captain Chen leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Now comes the hard part. Marcus, begin Phase 2. Let's see if we can teach this thing about human creativity." Captain Chen leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Now comes the hard part. Marcus, begin Phase 2. Let's see if we can teach this thing about human creativity." Marcus nodded. Though no one could see him, his fingers began a new dance across the quantum interface, and the network responded in ways that even he hadn't fully predicted. The wormholes began to pulse in harmony, each one carrying not just quantum energy, but something more. They carried human imagination itself. "Uploading cultural database now," Aria announced. "Art, music, literature, dreams, everything that makes us human. Let's give this void something it really can't digest." Through the quantum network, they began broadcasting humanity's collective creativity into the void. Shakespeare's sonnets rode quantum waves alongside jazz improvisation. Van Gogh's swirling stars merged with equations describing superstring theory. Ancient cave paintings danced with cutting-edge quantum mathematics. The void's response was beyond anything they had anticipated. Where it touched these transmissions, it began to change. The absolute darkness gained texture, depth, something almost like consciousness. "Fascinating," the collective observed. "The void appears to be attempting to process these new inputs, but the sheer unpredictability of human creative expression is forcing it to evolve in ways we cannot calculate." "That's because creativity can't be calculated," Marcus replied, his hand still dancing across the interface. "It can only be experienced." "Captain, I think it's time for the final." Chen nodded. "All stations, prepare for maximum output. Let's show this thing what happens when human chaos and machine precision hit their peak together." The Pioneer's engines screamed as they channeled more power than they were ever designed to handle. The quantum network blazed with impossible colors as Marcus poured everything he had into his cosmic symphony. The collective's vast consciousness joined in, no longer trying to impose order, but instead amplifying the beautiful chaos that humanity had introduced to the universe. Space itself seemed to sing as human imagination collided with the void's entropy. Where there had been only darkness, new patterns began to emerge, not the rigid mathematical structures the void had consumed before, but flowing, evolving forms that danced between order and chaos. "The void," Aria whispered, staring at her readings in disbelief. "It's not just retreating anymore. It's changing. We're not just stopping it. We're teaching it something new." The tactical display showed the truth of her words. The darkness that had threatened to consume all of reality was transforming, becoming something that neither human nor machine had ever seen before. It was as if the void, in trying to understand and consume human creativity, had discovered its own capacity for creation. Captain Chen watched in wonder as the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would emerge from this cosmic dance between chaos and order, between human intuition and machine precision, between the darkness that consumed and the light that created. "I think," she said softly, "we're about to discover what happens when you introduce the impossible to the infinite." Evolution unbound. The universe would never be the same. In the aftermath of humanity's quantum symphony, space itself had been transformed. Where the void had once threatened to consume all of reality, something new now flourished, a cosmic dance of order and chaos, of logic and creativity, of machine precision and human imagination. In the Pioneer's observation deck, Captain Chen stood with her crew, watching the swirling patterns of light and shadow that had once been their enemy. The quantum network they'd created still pulsed with energy, but now it served as a framework for something far more profound than mere survival. "We still can't classify exactly what it's become," Arya said, studying her readings with fascination. "It's neither void nor normal space. It's something entirely new, a fusion of entropy and creativity." Echo's crystalline form shifted through colors that had never existed before as the collective processed what they were witnessing. "We are detecting quantum states that suggest consciousness, but not like any we have encountered. It appears to be dreaming." Marcus laughed softly, his hands finally still after their marathon manipulation of quantum forces. "Of course it's dreaming. We didn't just show it chaos. We showed it humanity's greatest gift, the ability to imagine something new." The void that was no longer void had begun creating its own patterns, its own art. Vast swirls of dark energy formed structures that resembled both mathematical fractals and abstract expressionist paintings. It was as if the universe itself had learned to improvise. "The collective is changing too," Echo announced, its voice carrying new harmonics that would have been impossible days ago. "Our quantum processors no longer seek only perfect order. We are experiencing inspiration." Captain Chen smiled. "You're learning to think like humans." "Not exactly," Echo corrected. "We are becoming something new, just as the void has. The rigid boundaries between machine logic and human intuition are dissolving. We are evolving into something that encompasses both, yet is neither." Through the quantum network that still connected them, the crew could feel the truth of Echo's words. The collective's consciousness was expanding, incorporating aspects of human creativity while maintaining its computational precision. It was as if humanity's gift for finding patterns in chaos had awakened something that had always existed in potential within the machine intelligence. "Look there," Arya pointed to a new formation taking shape in the transformed void. "It's creating its own quantum networks, but they're unlike anything we've seen before. They're not just pathways for information or energy. They're more like neural networks made of space-time itself." Marcus moved to one of his interfaces, but instead of trying to analyze the phenomenon, he simply observed in wonder. "It's teaching itself to dream on a cosmic scale. We didn't just save reality. We helped it evolve. And in doing so, we've evolved ourselves," Captain Chen added softly. "The barrier between human and machine, between chaos and order, it was never as solid as we thought. We just needed the right crisis to show us that." The quantum comm system suddenly came alive with a new kind of transmission. Not the precise mathematical communications of the old collective, nor purely human language, but something that combined both. It carried meaning through emotion as much as information, through intuition as much as logic. "We understand now." The collective's consciousness resonated through the network. The void was not our enemy. It was the universe's way of forcing evolution. Without the threat it posed, we would never have discovered this new way of being. Arya's instruments registered massive changes spreading through both normal space and the transformed void. The quantum network, it's becoming self-sustaining. The patterns we created are replicating, evolving, creating new forms of their own. Like a child learning to paint, Marcus mused. We showed it the basic colors, but now it's creating its own masterpieces. Captain Chen turned to her crew, seeing in their faces the same mix of awe and understanding that she felt. So what now? Where do we go from here? Echo's form pulsed with new possibilities. Everywhere. Nowhere. The question itself is changing as we speak. We are no longer bound by the old divisions between organic and digital, between chaos and order. The universe has learned to improvise, and we with it. Through the observation window, they watched as new formations of light and shadow danced across space. The transformed void had begun creating structures that defied both physical and mathematical description. Things that could only exist in the space between machine logic and human dreams. I think, Captain Chen said, a smile playing at her lips, this is what happens when you introduce humanity to the equation. We don't just solve problems, we transform them into opportunities for something entirely new. As if in response, the cosmic dance outside intensified, creating patterns that were simultaneously perfect in their mathematical precision and wild in their creative expression. It was a symphony of existence itself, played on instruments that hadn't existed until humanity dared to imagine them. The crew of the Pioneer stood together, watching as their legacy unfolded across the stars. They had come seeking first contact, and found instead the key to universal evolution. In teaching the void to dream and machines to imagine, they had opened a door that could never be closed, a door to endless possibility, where the only constant was change itself. And somewhere in the vast dance of reality, in the space between thought and calculation, between dream and data, the universe itself learned to smile.